I never imagined my husband would leave me broken pregnant. 18 years later, tears of TR. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air felt thick, like a storm was brewing. My heart raced. I could feel the tremor in my hands as I clutched the letter like a lifeline. The words blurred through my tears. I can't do this anymore. He was gone, just like that. It was the end of our fairy tale, and I was left standing in the wreckage. Our son, Ethan, was just a toddler then. Blonde curls, innocent blues, and that infectious laugh. He was the light of my life, but now, I was sinking in shadows. A night that had promised sweet dreams turned into a nightmare. Him packing, the slamming of the door, my heart shattering. Just like that, I became a single mother, carrying the weight of my shattered dreams and a secret that would change everything. Days turned into weeks. I fought to keep the flood of emotions at bay. Each morning the sun rose, but my world felt buried in darkness. Friends tiptoed around me, their worried glances felt heavy. "Are you okay?" they'd ask, their voices laced with pity. But they didn't know. They didn't see the midnight cries, the panic of solitude. Then there were the whispers. Muffled conversations that flared into wild rumors behind my back. People loved a good story. A woman left alone with a child, broken, desperate. But no one spoke of the nights I spent wondering if love was just a cruel joke. It was on a blistering August night that everything changed. The temp was record high, sweat clinging to my skin. I was deep in thought when a knock shattered the stillness. I swung open the door, heart pounding, and there he stood. Dark hair disheveled, eyes haunted. The man who had walked out so easily, eyes now searching mine with an intensity that made my breath hitch. "Can we talk?" he asked, voice shaky. I hesitated. Memories of laughter, whispered secrets, and heartbreaking promises engulfed me. Was this a chance for closure, or another betrayal? I didn't know. As I stood in the doorway, thunder rumbled in the distance, a storm promising to break loose. The clock ticked loudly, as if urging me to make a choice. Should I let him in? Could he fix what he'd broken? My mind raced, confusion mixing with a flicker of hope, and just when I thought I could breathe again, hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The rain began to fall just as I stepped aside to let him enter. Heavy drops thudded against the roof, a chaotic symphony that mirrored my tumultuous thoughts. He slipped off his shoes at the door, a subconscious habit that once felt comforting but now felt like a hollow gesture. "How have you been?" he asked softly, rubbing the back of his neck, a nervous habit of his that I'd missed but simultaneously recoiled from. I could feel his eyes darting around the room, searching for remnants of the life we once shared, shying away from the raw wounds in our history. "Just trying to survive," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. It was true, yet that didn't encapsulate the loneliness that wrapped its tentacles around me each day. An uninvited visitor that overshadowed every moment of joy. He nodded, his expression pained. I could see he was trying to read me, but how could anyone perceive the labyrinth of hurt, anger, and lingering affection within my heart? The silence between us grew heavier with each passing second, thickening the air until I could hardly breathe. Finally, my resolve broke. "Why are you here?" I blurted too abruptly, the urgency cutting through the heaviness. "You left without a word. I don't think we can pretend this all goes away with a conversation." He took a shaky breath, moving closer, tentatively reaching out to touch my arm. I flinched, but the warmth of his fingers sent a ripple of nostalgia through me. I've missed you. I've thought about you and Ethan every single day. I messed up, and I know that doesn't mean much now, but I want to try to understand. The mention of Ethan struck a nerve. I hadn't expected him to speak his name. I felt a surge of protectiveness sweep over me. What right did he have to bring our son into this? Understand? Do you think it's that simple? 18 years, and you just show up and expect everything to fall back in place? He lowered his gaze, shame flashing across his features. No, I don't, he conceded. But I am here to find a way to make it right, to at least try to be back in your life, in Ethan's life. He deserves more than what I gave him. A surge of resentment emerged within me, battling against the tiny flicker of hope that danced precariously at the edges of my consciousness. I thought of Ethan asleep in his room, blissfully unaware of our fractured past and present. Do you even know anything about him anymore? I shot back, feeling tears prick the corners of my eyes. I've seen the photos. He looks just like you. It hurts, he admitted, his voice cracking on the last word. I could see the vulnerability written all over him, raw and exposed. Just as the air felt ready to crack, the sound of small, hurried footsteps broke the fragile moment. My instincts kicked in, and I stepped back, prepared to shield whatever storm brewed between us. Ethan! I called out, my heart racing as he entered the living room, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Mom? He glanced between us, confusion etching his features. I could see his innocence, an oasis among the turbulence of adult emotions. There's someone here to see you, I managed, my throat tight. I felt the tension creeping back in, the way it always did when I had to confront our past. My heart raced as I wondered how I could possibly explain this to him. With childlike curiosity, Ethan moved closer, eyes wide as he took stock of the man in front of him. And the moment hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken words. Daddy? He asked, his voice small but curious. The room around us shifted, the storm outside seeming to calm momentarily. I looked at Ethan, and in those innocent blue eyes I saw the glimmer of hope as well as the uncertainty. What would this mean for him and for me? Before I could form a response, the doorbell rang again. This time, my heart sank, for it wasn't just any guest, it was my estranged sister, Megan. Her disapproving glare would cut straight through the awkwardness. I faced him, a silent plea shimmering between us. Would he stay or walk away again? The door creaked open, and Megan's expression froze. What's going on here? She demanded, her voice steely. In that moment, the precarious balance of trust teetered on the edge of a cliff. Would we find a path back toward each other, or was this the moment everything splintered anew? The thick air turned electric, the storm of emotions now swirling chaotic and frayed, and all I could do was brace myself for the clash that would inevitably unfold. The silence hung heavily in the air as I stood there, heart pounding, caught between the uncomfortable tension of the past and the fragile hope for the future. I watched as Megan's eyes darted between Ethan and the man who had once been our whole world, now a stranger in many ways. Confusion gripped my chest, tightening with each passing second. Who is this? Megan demanded, challenging the unexpected nostalgia that filled the room. Mom, Ethan's voice cut through the tension, a soft plea that sent a jolt of apprehension coursing through me. His innocence felt like a fragile balloon in a room full of nails, and the last thing I wanted was for him to be popped open by harsh realities. He's your dad, Ethan, I managed, my voice barely a whisper, knowing full well the repercussions of those words. They felt like both a lifeline and a shackle, a chance for reconciliation wrapped in the weight of betrayal. Ethan's wide eyes filled with a mix of uncertainty and hope. Really? Daddy? There was an innocence in his voice, a dawning recklessness that tugged at my heart, but it was tempered by the shadow of loss that had followed us for so long. Yes, really? I glanced at him, my husband, standing there with a look of barely contained anxiety, like a young boy waiting to see if he had made the team. He stepped forward, almost instinctively, caught in the gravity of the moment. Megan, however, would not relent. Are you serious? After all this time? What are you doing here? Her voice shimmered with the kind of fury only family could muster, her protective nature spilling out. I could see in her eyes the resolve to confront the past, and shield me from its lingering ghosts. I know I don't have a right to be here, he started. But my sister was relentless. And oh, you don't. She wasn't backing down, a fierce wall springing up in defense of both Ethan and me. You left her. You left us, spinning in a world without you. That doesn't just disappear because you decide to show up one evening. The weight of her words hit me too, burying my heart beneath a layer of guilt and a thrum of fury. My anger bubbled just under the surface, mixing with the grief of our lost years. Yet I could see the longing on my husband's face. He struggled to find his path back, even if his choices had led him completely astray. There's nothing I can say to change that, he accepted quietly, looking down at Ethan, who now clutched my leg, sensing the whirlwind of emotions swirling around him. But I'm not asking for forgiveness. I want to be a part of his life. I want to try. The rawness of the moment lingered, like a pulsing wound refusing to heal. It was disorienting, how easily I slid into old patterns, the protective mother, the wounded wife, and the sister caught in a crossfire of history. My pulse quickened, and I felt my breath grow shallow as I took in the sight of the me husband and my son, a lifetime of questions resting on the edge of this one moment. Megan broke the silence. What's your plan? You think you can just waltz back in here and act like nothing happened? Like 18 years of pain and heartache are nothing but a bad dream? I don't expect anything to be easy, he countered, steadying himself. But I want to try to be better, to be present in Ethan's life. I can't erase my mistakes, but I want to be a part of the family again if you'll let me. Ethan, still wide-eyed and listening, leaned into my side, sensing my uncertainty, the steadiness of my decision faltering under the weight of inherited wounds. Mom, can he stay? He asked, his voice trembling slightly, as if he understood the enormity of what he was asking. I wanted to scream, to tell him that it wasn't that simple, that families were built on trust and love, not broken promises. But in his innocent conviction, I shared a flicker of the hope that had begun to take root inside me. What if he could be the father Ethan deserved? But at what cost to my own heart? I stammered, unsure of how to navigate the myriad emotions swirling within me. The avalanche of grief, anger, hope, and confusion mingled sharply, swirling around my chest until I felt suffocated. Megan's expression softened slightly as she stepped back, seeing the turmoil written on my face. You need to make this decision for yourself, Callista. Think about Ethan and what it means for him, she said, her voice gentle yet firm. There was a kindness in her tone that sparked my resolve, but the fear of making the wrong choice loomed larger. As if sensing this shift, my husband took a step back, his eyes dropping to the floor. I'll wait. I just want to be here for both of you, but I want push. If you need time, take it. His declaration echoed in my mind, a bittersweet reminder of the ambivalence that clouded my heart. He was here, yet the barriers we had built were still towering, and now I stood on the brink of a precipice, teetering between two worlds, a life we might reclaim and the life I had painstakingly built. And then, in the quiet after the storm, it happened. Ethan's hand slipped from mine and he stepped forward, extending his tiny arm toward the man who had been absent for so long, yet here, a living, breathing option in front of him. Will you play with me? The air went cold, time freezing as I held my breath, my heart ravenously desperate for a glimmer of hope, terrified of the possible fracture this request could instigate. It was a simple question but a loaded one, rippling through our fractured lives like a pebble dropped into a serene lake. And with it arose the unthinkable: what if in this quest for healing, I lost control of everything I had built to protect us? My eyes darted from Ethan's hopeful gaze to my husband's face, where uncertainty mingled with an unquenchable yearning. This was a fork in the road, stronger than any words exchanged. Before another moment could pass, the sound of a phone vibrating on the table broke through the tension. My heart sank again. The name on the screen: me mom. In avoidance, I'd let this moment stretch, but I couldn't avoid reality for long. Perhaps this was fate, an intertwining of all our stories. With a trembling hand, I picked up the phone, feeling something shift in the air. I pressed answer, and as I did, I caught the expression on Megan's face. It was a mix of bewilderment and concern, like she sensed the thunderstorm gathering overhead, ready to crack open and spill its secrets. And then came the news that would change everything. Callista, I don't know how to tell you this. My breath stopped. The air around us seemed to evaporate. The past suddenly surged forward, a tidal wave of consequences ready to crash down upon us. I felt the weight of history pressing on my shoulders as my heart raced. The fragile ties we had woven in this moment could easily be unraveled. They might not just break, but shatter. As my mother's voice trembled through the phone, a chilling silence enveloped the room. Every heartbeat surged between the spaces of unspoken words, the tension thick enough to cut through. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, squeezing my eyes shut, mentally preparing for whatever storm would break. "What is it?" I finally breathed, desperate for clarity amidst the chaos. "Callista, it's your father," she said, her voice cracking. "He's been hospitalized. He had a heart attack." Those words hung in the air like an uninvited guest, heavy and unsettling. Everything shifted in that moment. The future, however tentative it had seemed, suddenly felt burdened by a past I had vowed to keep hidden. I had tried to be strong, to keep the wounds covered, but now they began to ache, the rawness of betrayal and loss bubbling up within me like a festering wound. Megan's eyes locked onto mine, worry flaring in her expression as she leaned in closer. Ethan, blissfully unaware of the storm hovering, looked up at me with confusion, still clutching the edges of innocence. "Mom? What's wrong?" My throat tightened as I choked back a response, feeling the walls that I had so painstakingly constructed begin to quake. It's my dad," I finally managed, each word drenched in an emotional weight that threatened to buckle my knees. "Are you going?" Megan asked cautiously, never one to shy away from truth, her protectiveness rising slowly to the surface, battling beneath the waves of concern. "I don't know," I replied, feeling the fissures widen, pulling at my ability to hold everything together. Part of me screamed to flee back to the cocoon I'd built, a fortress of distance away from the pain he had once caused. But I couldn't dismiss the flicker of unease that generated from the possibility of lost time, from the gnawing sensation that perhaps somewhere, buried beneath the years, was a seed of hope for mending what felt irreparable. "They'll come with you," Megan asserted, her fierce loyalty shining through. "This isn't something you should face alone." I shook my head. There was so much unresolved anger mixed in with my worry, a cocktail potent enough to sedate my thoughts. "You shouldn't have to. I don't know how I feel yet. I can't put you through that." She took a step toward me, intensity in her gaze. "You need me. We can figure it out together, just like we always have." Her words echoed through the tempest of unresolved emotions. Somehow, amidst the thunderclouds of my past looming larger than ever, her simple offer brought a moment of calm, a flicker of warmth amidst the cold uncertainty. Ethan let go of my leg and took Megan's hand, searching her face for answers, tension gripping his little brows. "Will Grandpa be okay?" he asked, a child's innocent curiosity piercing the weighty air, stirring something deep within me, making the implications of family circle back around. The vulnerability of that question sent a tidal wave of emotions crashing. The anticipation of forgiveness and possible reconciliation tangled with fear of deeper wounds reopening, but the mere act of his small hand in Megan's steadied me. This boy, my son, was a living reminder that love ran deeper than past betrayals and broken promises. "I need to make this decision for Ethan too," I murmured, mostly to myself, the pieces of my resolve aligning for the first time amidst the chaos. "Let's go," I said finally, determination threading through the fear. "Well, go to the hospital." Megan nodded, resolute. I took a deep breath, nodding in return, gratitude softening the edges of my anxiety. But as I turned to speak to Ethan, drawn in by the gravity of his wide eyes filled with questions, I caught my husband's expression, lost somewhere between agony and desire and unaddressed regret that sent pangs through my chest. "Callista," his voice interrupted the moment, the tenacity in it piercing the air, "I can't. Should I come with you?" The question hung, heavy with the fragile connections we were struggling to rebuild. My mind reeled, trapped in the agony of choices. Would he be a comfort or another source of conflict? "Please, Mom," Ethan urged, oblivious to the tighter knot binding us all. "Don't leave me." His need rumbled with innocence, piercing through my protective layers. I hesitated, battling with the prospect of my husband being part of this journey alongside us. The tangle of love and heartache, anger and yearning, seemed insurmountable. My heart said to take a chance, while my mind cautioned against hopes too grand for the bitter histories we harbored. Then my phone buzzed, pulling my attention back, and I glanced down at the screen. A new message flashed across the display, one that would plant seeds of unease in the heart of this already chaotic moment. A name I hadn't expected: Daniel, my father's brother, uncertain as to how this piece of information might unveil itself next. Ignoring its implications would be impossible, and the edges of my world began to blur in a cacophony of concern. The past, the present, and the possibilities of future pain converged, reminding me all too keenly of what hung in the air: too much unresolved, too much at stake. Time felt as if it slipped through my fingers like sand, promising the dust of lost moments rather than any semblance of resolution. "Let's go," I finally managed, trying to root the sound of my heart in a determination I hardly felt. As I took Ethan's hand and led him out of our home, I felt the weight of history trailing behind us like a shadow. We were stepping toward a future that felt ever more uncertain, terrified of what it might hold. Yet, with each step, I sensed the subtle shifts of profound change at our doorstep, and I couldn't help but wonder, would this plunge forward tether us to old wounds or pilot us toward unexpected healing? The hospital loomed before us, its stark white facade almost mocking the chaos swirling inside me. I felt as though I were walking through a haze, my mind a cacophony of memories flashing in and out with each steep. A childhood of laughter tinged with shadows, laughter that became distant echoes as distance crept in, sadness draping itself over every joyous moment. Ethan squeezed my hand tighter, his small fingers trusting mine to keep him steady. As we entered the lobby, the antiseptic scent of the hospital swept over us, igniting a knot of fear low in my stomach. I didn't expect to see him like this, frail and vulnerable, someone I fought to erase from my life now lying on a hospital bed, breathing heavily. My heart went out to Ethan, who only grasped pieces of this family puzzle, unaware of the complex tapestry woven from love and loss, disappointment and hope. The waiting room was a dismal shade of gray, filled with families huddled together, their bodies taut and waiting. Megan found a seat first, but I stood at the entrance, holding my breath, trying to shut out the rising tide of dread. My father had always been a figure in my Liffeyan amalgam of teachings and betrayals, warmth and abandonment. I wanted to stand firm against the tide of memories that crashed against me, but the emotion had a way of slipping between my fingers. "Mom, do you think he'll be okay?" Ethan asked again, tugging my skirt with his small, unsteady hand. I knelt down to meet his gaze, forcing a soft smile. "I hope so, sweetie. Doctors are really good at fixing people." "But he's also sick," Ethan said, his voice cracking just like my resolve. "Does he know I'm coming?" "I hope so," was all I could muster. Just then, the elevator doors parted, and Daniel stepped out, his face ashen. He looked older than I remembered, the weight of familial burdens etching deeper lines on his forehead. Our eyes met, and I could see that same flicker of unresolved pain reflected in his gaze. For a moment, everything around us faded, just two hearts forever altered by the same source yet divided by choices. "Callista," he began cautiously, his voice breaking the fragile silence surrounding us. "I just got here. How is he?" I wanted to scream, to tell him how his brother's decisions had painted my childhood in colors of resentment, but instead, I merely shook my head. "We don't know yet. Maybe you should check in," he suggested gently, his eyes flicking toward Ethan, then back to me. Before I could respond, a nurse stepped into the waiting area, her clipboard clutched tightly, a look of professional concern etched across her face. "Family of Charles Peterson?" she called, scanning the room. We shared a look, and in that instant, Daniel stepped forward, responding to the nurse's beckoning, his voice resolute. "That's my brother." I wanted to protest, to voice my resentment over the way he had distanced himself from our family troubles. But I swallowed it down as I watched Daniel move toward the nurse, feeling the burden of old grievances hang heavy between us. "Let's stay together, okay?" I told Ethan, who was subtly shifting between concern and curiosity, as he watched my father's brother move away. He nodded solemnly, and as I settled back into the seat, I noticed Megan glancing in my direction, her silent strength urging me to breathe deeply. Yet every breath felt like a thread unraveling, pulling everything closer to the edge. After what felt like hours, Daniel returned, a shadow over his features. "He wants to see you," he said, his eyes drifting toward Ethan, sorrow pooling deep within their depths. My heart raced, my palms clammy as I swallowed hard. I didn't know if I could do this. Part of me wanted closure, a chance to air the resentment I'd bottled, but another part feared the potential of reopening wounds. "Are you coming?" Daniel asked softly, misreading my hesitation. Without waiting for an answer, I stood, guided by the soft pull of Ethan's hand. As we made our way toward the room, a chilling combination of dread and determination settled over me. I had to face the man who had once held me, who had given me life, but also sowed grief into those same moments. The door opened slowly, the sound echoing through the small space. I stepped inside, the fluorescent lighting harsh and unwelcoming. There he was, my father, frail and pale, but unmistakable. Years of anger tangled with tenderness within me, a tempest that threatened to engulf my resolve. "Callista," his voice emerged, raspy but palpable, as if it reached through the storm of our shared history. "Hey, Dad," I replied, my voice barely more than a whisper. And in that instant, as my heart raced and the past rushed to claim me yet again, a new revelation gripped my throat, the kind of revelation that twisted my emotions and drove a deep knife into the old wounds. His gaze shifted from me to Ethan, the moment stretching longer than I ever anticipated. "What's he doing here?" My father's narrowed eyes softened, but a hint of pain lingered. He's my son." The words hung in the air, fragile yet dense, resonating a quiet power among the hastily stitched ties that had once bound us. "Your son?" he echoed in disbelief, before finally letting the weight of reality settle in. Suddenly, I felt the tremors of time collapse around me, a world of honesty waiting to be unearthed. My father shifted in his bed, revealing a truth that could change everything, the fractured connection of our lives tethered to a family history more intricate and painful than I had ever known, one that was now unraveling before my eyes. But just as hearts began to strum the chords of reconciliation, the hospital intercom cracked, a familiar name cutting through the silence. A name I never imagined would return to haunt our fractured family. "Code Blue in room 302. Code Blue in room 302. In that moment, a chill rushed over me, mingling dread with anticipation, knowing that this single cry for help could obliterate every moment of courage I was mustering. An unspoken fear surfaced within me, hope of a connection that could so easily slip away, hearts on the precipice of healing yet faced with the cruelties of fate. My breath caught in my throat, and I glanced at Ethan, who looked up at me with wide, innocent eyes. "What's happening, Mom?" As uncertainty cloaked us once more, I realized we were not just on the brink of reconciliation but also on the edge of a deeper calamity that could rip us apart all over again. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, and the weight of our shared histories hovered like heavy fog, often confounding clarity with darkness. As the announcement echoed above us, dread gripped me, the past and present crashing together in a chaotic dance. I wanted to bolt, to hide from what was unfolding before us, but I could see Ethan's confusion, the eager question shining in his eyes, anchoring me in place. "Mom?" he pressed softly, leaning against my leg for comfort, pulling me from my spiraling thoughts. "Everything's going to be okay, sweetheart," I managed to reply, my voice trembling while my heart threatened to leap from my chest. But the lie tasted bitter on my tongue, and I hated myself for uttering it. My father watched me intently from the bed, his eyes shifting between Ethan and me. It was as if he was trying to grasp a puzzle piece he had only just glimpsed. Would he understand the life I had carved out of the shattered remnants of our family? Would I allow him to? But in the shadow of those questions, an undeniable need for answers gnawed at me, emboldening my momentary courage. "Dad," I started, the words forming a delicate bridge across our chasm. "I need you to tell me, why were you never there? Why did you make the choices you did?" His gaze faltered, an unexpected flicker of vulnerability breaking through the hardened exterior he wore. "It's complicated, Callista. I made mistakes. I ran from the kind of life I helped create. The truth hung between us like a chasm, and I could almost feel its sting. Complicated doesn't even begin to describe it, I shot back, fighting tears that threatened to betray my facade. You could have fought for us. For me. Ethan, sensing the rising tide of emotion, squeezed my hand, grounding me. Mom, do you think you'll get to know my grandpa? Hearing Ethan utter the word grandpa settled into my heart like a soothing balm, and in that moment the storm within me seemed at odds with the fragile light radiating from him. It forced my father to realize the privilege of connection and opportunity that might slip away if his choices remained unexamined. The silence stretched between us, thickening with every heartbeat. I refused to break it first, determined to extract more than vague apologies and half-hearted explanations. As if sensing the frailty of our moment, my father shifted, his voice thicker than before. I know I made choices that hurt you, that hurt your mother. I thought I was protecting you from the man I was becoming. Something shifted in the air, a window of honesty cracking open. Protecting me? Or protecting yourself? I challenged softly, unearthing my own fears while exposing his. He looked away, and I could see the struggle etched into his features. I had drawn blood with my words, and yet I hoped it would sting in the way a healing wound does, raw but necessary. I didn't know how to face what I had done, he admitted finally, a whisper weighted with shame. And then the storm that had collected in my chest began to churn anew, responding to the awakening of memories, moments of him leaving, the quiet absence filling my childhood like a specter. You still don't get it, do you? I said, frustration lacing my voice. You chose to leave. You made that decision, and it ripped the heart out of our family. Just then, another voice in the room pierced through the tension. That same nurse re-entered, her expression anxious. I'm sorry, but we need to clear this area. Please wait in the lobby while the fragile connection that had begun to form threatened to unravel as I stood there, petrified. The code blue could change everything, rearranging the pieces at a moment's notice. The fear flickered between us, a reminder that any possibility of healing could vanish in an instant. What's going on? Daniel's voice cut through the chaos as he returned to the room, worry draping his features. Your brother needs critical care. We believe it's serious, the nurse replied curtly before steering me and Ethan toward the door. Please wait outside, can't we stay? Ethan pleaded, looking up at me with anxiety written across his tiny face. My heart ached for him. No, baby. We have to let the doctors do their job, I murmured, kneeling to his level, but as the weight of fear settled in, I saw a flash of determination in my father's eyes. Take care of him, my father whispered, but his voice wavered, somehow conveying both a plea and a weight of understanding. With one last look, I moved toward the door, pulling Ethan with me, feeling the tether of our lives straining behind us. Daniel followed closely, his presence a silent pillar amidst our turbulence. As the doors swung shut behind us, I couldn't shake the feeling of something shifting, hope tinged with despair, a moment where the possibility of healing collided with impending loss. In the lobby, I took a breath and tried to steady myself, but the anxiety was palpable, gnawing at the edges of our alive connection. Anything could change. Then, surprisingly, a familiar voice cut through the noise like a soothing balm. There you are! A cheerful face beamed, belonging to an old friend from high school who worked in the hospital. I heard about your dad. I'm really sorry. If you need anything, let me know, alright? You're not alone. As she moved on, her kindness washed over me like a brief rain amid a parched desert. My heart ached to thank her, to embrace the small gesture, but truthfully, it only made the shadows more pronounced. The intercom crackled again, my father's name echoing ominously, but this time it was paired with a check for family members. All available family members to room 302. We have an update. My stomach twisted in knots, dread racing back through my veins as I exchanged panicked glances with Daniel and Ethan. The moment had returned, the threads of hope fraying at the edges before me. But what would the update bring? One fragile moment stretched into the possibility of an entire future rewritten, should the winds of fate decide to shift again. And I couldn't shake the feeling that the horizon held a revelation even darker than anticipated. The lobby felt like a world suspended between time and emotion, an ebbing tide of uncertainty swirling around us as I clutched Ethan's hand tightly. His small fingers gripped my palm as if grounding us in a reality that threatened to slip away. Daniel remained silent, a steadfast presence that sheltered us under a shared weight of unknowing. Every announcement blurred into the next, the hospital's mechanical voice ringing hollow in my ears. Each passing moment filled with dread, a reminder that the cradle of hope I had tried to construct was fragile at best. The chance of heartbeats fading or family ties unraveling haunted me with each tick of the clock. "Mom, why is Grandpa sick?" Ethan's innocent voice broke through the fog, laced with confusion and that brilliant brightness only a child could possess. "Will he be okay?" I knelt beside him, forcing a reassuring smile, though my heart felt like a fractured puzzle. I hope so, sweetheart." I longed to say more, to shield him from the intricacies of adult pain, but words failed me. Doctors are really good at helping people. They're going to do everything they can. Daniel shifted beside us, his brow furrowed as he cast fleeting glances toward the nurse's station. "Well, no, soon enough. Let's stay positive, okay?" His tone was more an incantation than a conviction, a gentle reminder that sometimes hope came from the act of believing even when the world seemed against us. But reality crashed into my optimism like a storm against a frail sail. And as if summoned by my dark thoughts, the intercom chimed again, a sharper tone that signaled the return of that darkness. "Family members of William Hartley, please report to room 302 immediately." No longer able to breathe through the suffocating tension, I shot up, dragging Ethan with me. The knot in my stomach twisted tighter, fueling a fear I had to face. The waiting room felt imposing, each step echoing louder than the last. The walls, draped in sterile white, felt more like a prison than a sanctuary, reminding me that the truth we were racing toward could throw us all into an abyss. As we approached the room, the heaviness seeped into my bones, and I felt Daniel's hand clasp mine harder, anchoring me to the moment. We were almost there, but the dread of what waited loomed before us, a looming shadow whispering the worst. The door opened with a soft creak, and I stepped inside, the familiar sterile smell stinging my nostrils. My father lay there, weaker than he had been, eyes glassy yet filled with a depth of emotion that echoed my own. He looked fragile, as if a single breath could sweep him away, and sorrow clawed at me with its talons. "Callista," he croaked, his voice heavy with the strain of sickly attempts. The bed was adorned with wires and machines, faint beeps derailing the air's silence. "Thank you for coming, of course," I managed as my gaze flitted between him and the doctor standing at the foot of the bed. The doctor's expression was serious, but his eyes held a flicker of compassion. "Thank you all for being here," he began, addressing us as though we were a family united by present chaos. "I'm afraid William's condition is serious, but we have options available and, more importantly, we still have time to discuss them." "How much time?" My question cut through the air, raw and breathless. I felt as though I was teetering on the edge of something monumental, my father's life, and my heart raced to gather the potential aftermath. "I cannot provide an exact time frame," he responded gently, as if treading carefully on the thin ice of my hopes. "But he is stable for now. We need to make decisions quickly, however. The next steps are vital for him." Ethan slipped his hand from mine and moved closer to Grandpa's bed. "Hi, Grandpa," he said softly, the innocence of the moment a balm against the darkness that loomed. "Hey there, kiddo," my father managed a faint smile, the joy of seeing Ethan shining through the gray veil of fear. "You're so brave." Ethan beamed, his small spirit rallying against the bleakness of the room, offering a glimpse of light amidst the heartache. But the happiness was fleeting, a hollow bubble in the vast ocean of impending loss. "We should talk," Daniel said quietly to me, his eyes searching mine as the conversation about decisions spun on beneath the surface. I could see it there, a subtle shift. He was trying to protect me from deeper wounds we were still fighting to heal. "Not now, please," I managed. The pain of potential goodbyes loomed heavily. But the undertow of choice was still present, lurking just outside the sterile confines. A choice that could change everything. The doctor continued, outlining the treatment options while my mind spiraled with questions I couldn't articulate. I could almost feel the weight of every choice echoing through me, a battle like the one I had with myself years ago, to forgive, to understand, to let the past come out of the shadows, or to shut it out forever. As the doctor concluded, a moment of strained silence held us captive, each of us grappling with a new reality, small resolutions blurring amidst the urgency of the unknown. I met my father's gaze across the chasm of regret, and something flickered within, not resolution, but the dying ember of the possibility of reconciliation. Then, without warning, a frantic voice blared from the intercom again. Code red, room 302. All available staff to room 302. A wave of panic washed over me, the void of certainty collapsing entirely as reality slammed into us with such force, it left me breathless. The room erupted into movement around us, nurses pouring in with urgency burning in their eyes. I felt Ethan clutching my leg tightly, while Daniel positioned himself protectively in front of us, shielding us from the chaos unfolding in front of our eyes. And in that instant, as the room surged with frantic energy, I caught a glimpse of Ethan staring up at me, confusion brimming in his innocent eyes, clinging to the last threads of hope. "Mom?" he asked softly, his little voice breaking through the storm of commotion. "What's happening?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unyielding, as my heart fractured all over again. I had no answer. In my mind, it clicked a painful realization that my father was fighting for his life just as much as I was fighting for the pieces of our fractured family. But as chaos painted the room in frantic strokes, the fragile balance I felt in that moment wielded a depth and weight I didn't anticipate. I could sense shifting, a reckoning on the horizon that promised not just heartache but the unexpected twist of destiny. "Mom?" Ethan's expression grew anxious, and for a fleeting moment, every unspoken word, every unresolved question crashed around us like waves. And I knew, as the sirens wailed around the room, that this moment would alter my world forever. As the organized chaos blurred before me, I felt myself pulled into a whirlwind of emotions that threatened to drown me. Doctors and nurses rushed about, their coordinated efforts contrasting against the stillness wrapping around my heart. Ethan's small hand, newly clammy, was a lifeline, yet also a stark reminder of how much was at stake. I dropped to my knees beside him, unable to stand tall in the face of the storm. "Stay here, sweetheart," I whispered urgently, though I was unsure who needed the reassurance more, him or me. He nodded, his eyes wide but trusting, even as fear flickered in their depths. As I crawled closer towards my father's bed, the sounds of murmured commands intertwined with the frantic beeping of machines. The doctor, moments before discussing our choices, was now in a flurry of activity trying to stabilize my father. The tides had turned, and reality poured over us relentlessly. We were no longer merely witnesses but willing participants in this heart-wrenching battle. "Let's move," one nurse called, directing her gaze to me. "You need to step back." My heart shattered at the notion of being removed from my father's side, as if my presence alone could fend off the dark specter of mortality that loomed. But panic surged in tandem with resolve, forcing me to retreat just enough to obey but refusing to succumb entirely. "Is he going to be okay?" I shouted in desperation, my voice straining against the cacophony. The doctor met my gaze through the chaos, and in that instant, I read the truth that traversed beyond their chosen words: a fight was not guaranteed. "We're doing everything we can," he called back, his voice edged with urgency. But it wasn't enough to quell the storm surging within me. Then, as if time had taken a deliberate pause, I felt a gentle hand touch my shoulder. I turned to find a nurse named Jane, someone who had worked in the ward long enough that familiarity cradled the space between us. "I know this is frightening, but we're here for him and for you. He's getting the care he needs," she said softly, her voice both kind and firm. It brought a modicum of comfort, reminding me that this moment, while overshadowed by urgency, was not devoid of humanity. Ethan was still at my side, little fingers wrapped tightly around my leg, embodying an innocent inquiry into a world he was far too young to understand. "Mom, is Grandpa going to come home soon?" he asked, his voice trembling but sweet, a small plea that coursed through me like a blade. I swallowed hard, almost choking on the sorrow building inside. "We need to be brave, honey," I replied, forcing a tremble of hope into my tone that felt more like a fragile thread than a grounded truth. We have to wait and see. As the chaos continued to spiral, I caught sight of a woman in the corner of the room, tears silently tracing down her cheeks as she clutched a small bouquet of wilted daisies. My heart twisted as I realized she must be facing her own calamity. Somehow her grief seeped into mine, intertwining our pain while reminding me there was a community united in this harrowing experience. Suddenly she approached, unexpected kindness glimmering in her eyes despite her evident heartache. "I know it's hard," she whispered, placing the flowers gently in Ethan's small hands. "These were my mother's favorites. Maybe they can help remind your grandpa he's loved." She hesitated. "I hope they provide a little light." Ethan looked up at her, eyes wide, as the unexpected gift brightened the room's sorrow just that little bit more. It was small, yet in the weight of our shared pain, it felt monumental. I found myself unraveling just slightly, the tears leaking from my eyes as I squeezed Ethan's shoulder, my pulse thrumming with the bittersweet essence of human kindness. "Thank you," I managed to say, a lump lodged in my throat. But just as the warmth of that moment swirled through us, the doctor emerged at the foot of the bed, his face stern and serious again, dragging us back into the quagmire of uncertainty. "Callista," he said slowly, and I felt my heart leap into my throat, ready to hear something I dreaded yet needed to know. "Your father has stabilized for now," but he paused, the weight of his next words palpable in the air. "We need to move quickly to prepare for potential surgery later tonight." Potential? The words slipped from my lips like a confession, the gravity of it raw and resonating. What does that mean?" "It means the situation is tenuous. The surgery could bring complications," or he swallowed, looking at Ethan before continuing, "or it may prolong his life." Each word he uttered landed like a hammer on my heart, fracturing the precious hang of hope I had sought to hold on to. It felt cruel, a cruel twist to have to face the gravity of decisions that could ripple through not just our family, but Ethan's life. "I understand," I whispered, my voice devoid of the strength I had clung to moments before. My mind spiraled into chaos. The choices we had to make felt impossibly heavy. I had longed for healing within my family and now found myself grappling with the concept of loss, uncertain of how much longer the threads of our bond could withstand the pressure of impending grief. "Mom!" Ethan's voice broke through once again, a reminder that even amid suffering, the innocence of childhood lingered, searching for reassurance. I knelt beside him, steadying my trembling hand on his shoulder, but all I wanted was to protect him from this morass. As I gazed into Ethan's trusting eyes, a new wave of determination washed over me. Somewhere deep within the turmoil, I understood that this was not just about fighting for my father but rebuilding hope for my son who saw the world through wonder, not yet scarred by its harsh realities. But my resolve was interrupted by a sudden commotion behind me, a new figure entering the fray, shattering the illusion of control. A man in a suit, sharp and imposing, walked into the room like a specter. His presence exuded authority, and with it came the promise of chaos I had never anticipated. "Where's William Hartley?" he demanded, scanning the room, and it felt as if the very air thickened with the weight of unspoken secrets. My heart raced with dread as I stood up, facing this unexpected intrusion on the fragile tapestry we were trying to weave in our family's hospital room. Whatever he was here for, I knew it would bring about new turmoil, a revelation that would shatter the moment's calm and threaten everything I thought I was prepared to face. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, barely keeping my voice steady. But the man's eyes met mine, inscrutable, filled with a tenacity that unnerved me to my core. "I have information relevant to Mr. Hartley's case," he replied, his tone cold and impersonal. "And you need to hear it." My stomach dropped, pulse racing, as dread wrapped around my heart. Whatever this man wanted to unveil was bound to break open secrets guarded too closely and, through that, expose the fractures that required deep healing. As I exchanged glances with Ethan, nothing could prepare me for the revelations waiting in the wings, ready to weave into the already tangled web of our lives. I could only hope that we would emerge from this trial not wholly broken, but perhaps built anew, even if the price was steep. The grip of uncertainty tightened around me as I faced the imposing figure of the man who had disrupted our fragile sanctuary. Ethan's innocent presence beside me felt like a gentle anchor I desperately needed as the man's gaze bored into me, probing for a reaction I was determined not to reveal. "Who are you?" I repeated, a little louder this time, my heart thundering in my chest. "My name is Daniel," he stated flatly, offering no further identification beyond that. "I work with your father's medical team and have information that could impact his treatment. That doesn't explain why you stormed in like a judge at a courtroom." My voice quivered slightly, colored by the blending anxiety and defiance that he continued unfazed, eyes flickering briefly to Ethan before settling back on me. "William Hartley is facing complications that may relate to his past history. It's imperative you understand the implications." The room narrowed around us, sounds muffled as the words "past history" echoed in my mind, brewing questions I had never thought I would have to confront. A fleeting shadow of guilt crept in as I thought of how little I had truly known about my father's life before he became the man I knew. The father who danced with Ethan at family gatherings, who always had time to listen, who showed unconditional love. Yet beneath that cherished facade, was there a hidden history that could shatter us all? "What do you mean?" The pit in my stomach churned with every word. "What complications? Your father's lifestyle choices." His words curled tight like vines around my heart as my mind reeled, awaiting the impending truth with fingers crossed. "They influenced his health more than anyone realized. We might need to consider genetic factors in his treatment, factors that could compromise." I shook my head, feeling the world tilt. "No," I interrupted, unwilling to hear the weight of implications I couldn't fully grasp. "You can't mean he's been hiding serious health issues from us." I felt a flicker of anger, but even more profound was the agony of suspicion that sullied the memories I had clung to. "Callista," Daniel pressed gently, but his eyes were unswayed. "You need to face this. The darker aspects of your father's life may not only affect his treatment, but could possibly affect your emotional readiness for what lies ahead." He took a step closer, sensing that my resolve was beginning to waver. "You should be prepared for the possibility that, depending on how things develop, you may have to make decisions about his ongoing care." The sob trapped in my throat escaped in a choked gasp. I was overwhelmed, sinking under the weight of potential loss in more senses than one. The chaos of thoughts circled relentlessly, and all the moments I had taken for granted came rushing back, the laughter, the memories, the simplicity of a father that I now feared might be fractured beyond repair, and in that turmoil, a small hand slipped into mine. Ethan gazed up, his expression puzzled and concerned. "Mom, what's wrong? Is Grandpa going to be okay?" Innocence radiated from him like a warm light, and it left me raw, aching under the burden of the truth. I turned away from Daniel just in time to shield Ethan from the monster looming over us. "Yes, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile that felt foreign on my lips. "Grandpa is strong. He's going to fight this." My words were a promise and a plea, a litany I crafted from hope and desperation, praying against reason. At my side, Daniel stood silently, weighing his next words. "Callista, if you want to discuss this further, I can arrange a private room," he said quietly. "You may need time to process." I felt his abundance of concern, but mixed with it all, there lingered a flicker of impatience, perhaps even menace. "I appreciate your help," I managed, though my eyes remained fixed on Ethan, the boy who deserved honesty but wouldn't understand the shadows swirling in the air. "Mom, can we get ice cream?" Ethan's question was innocent, yet it broke through the tumult within me like an unexpected bomb. It was an insistence on childhood normalcy amidst chaos that grounded me. For that fleeting moment, sure enough, amid this whirlwind of fear and revelations, Ethan's simple desire for comfort reminded me of life's small joys. "Yes, maybe later," I said softly, wishing desperately that we could escape to a world where ice cream and laughter triumphed over the foreboding. "Let's just be with Grandpa for now, all right?" As I bent down and wrapped my arms around him, a flicker of hope ignited within me. No matter what secrets lay buried in my father's past, together, we would face what came next. The love of a child could sometimes eclipse the darkest truths if only one had the strength to lean into it. But just as that warmth began to thaw the ice clinging to my heart, Daniel coughed, bringing me back to the stark reality of the situation. "There's one last thing you should know," he said, allowing a pause large enough for my heart to skip a beat. Your father's past doesn't just affect him. It has implications for you, too. Genetic testing may be necessary for you and Ethan. The gravity of those words hit me like a cold wave, dousing the flickering flame of hope. My knees trembled, my heart twisted helplessly. The unexpected weight of potential hereditary risks loomed like an anchor, dragging us deeper into uncertainty. In that moment, I felt the fraying of so many threads that had just barely held our family tapestry intact. Before I could respond, the room dimmed with the urgency that swirled like a storm around us. I longed for stability, to be the pillar my son needed. But instead, the chaotic turmoil swirled, threatening to consume us both, unveiling layers of consequences waiting to rattle our already unsteady world. With the revelation casting a shadow over our fragile hope, I squeezed Ethan tighter, drowning myself in the love that connected us, and silently promised we would face whatever came next together. The soft beeping of the machines created a rhythm, almost like a heartbeat, grounding me in the reality that I was still in the hospital, still fighting for my father's life and grappling with a past that seemed to have its grasp firmly around every decision I was now faced with. Ethan still clung to my hand, his small fingers trembling but his spirit unyielded. This was his grandpa, the man who had to see him grow, the man who could help tie the frayed strings of our family back together. I marveled at his innocence, wishing I could preserve it forever, keeping him from the reality of the adult world that often felt unbearable. But how could I protect him from a history that was already coursing through his veins? I thought of the implications Daniel had mentioned, the genetic testing looming ahead, a dark cloud ready to rain on our fragile hopes. The future of our family felt like a tightrope walk over an abyss of uncertainty. The doctor returned suddenly, bringing a jolt of apprehension with him. "Callista," he said, his tone serious, drawing my gaze with palpable intensity. "We've stabilized your father for the moment, but the next few hours are critical. We need a decision on his treatment plan soon." The weight of the words felt like shackles on my heart. "What are my options?" I asked, desperate but resolute. There was no room for denial anymore. We had played this game long enough. We can begin with medication to manage the symptoms, but surgery offers a chance at direct intervention. "The risks are high, Callista," the doctor explained, his brow furrowed in concern. "You'd be on the hook for determining his path forward." The flicker of anger bubbled within me. How could this fall on my shoulders? 18 years, and now I was to make a decision about my father's life, about the man who had weaved so many burdens into our family tapestry. Ethan tugged at my side, his curious mind still grappling for some clarity. "Is Grandpa going to be okay, Mom?" His voice, innocent and fragile, pierced the thick tension in the air. Gazing down into his expectant eyes, I forced a smile, knowing that I had to protect him from the reality of these choices even for just a moment longer. "He's a fighter, honey. We'll do everything we can to help him." But the truth hung perilously. I saw the weight of expectation resting on my shoulders. I had spent years navigating the choppy waters of heartbreak. Could I really make such a momentous decision with so much at stake? The doctor stepped a bit closer, his eyes reflecting an empathetic concern. "The risks are significant, but if your father has any chance of recovery, it'll be surgery. You need to make this decision soon. I'm here to guide you through it." The gentle nudge of authority, the gravity of the situation brought a surge of emotions crashing down upon me. I turned to Ethan, wrapping an arm around his small shoulders as though he might provide the strength I desperately needed. "Okay," I finally murmured, feeling the depth of despair swirling within me like a storm ready to break. "I'll choose the surgery." The doctor nodded, relief momentarily washing over him as he moved to prepare the plan, the urgency in his demeanor surging. I felt the light in the room darken slightly, the weight of my family's past and present compressing onto me. Ethan remained at my side, the silent pillar I needed. But even amidst this stark reality, something astonishing unfolded. Suddenly, from the midst of the chaos, the door swung open, revealing Daniel, the family member I least expected. His expression radiated a mix of concern and urgency, and I felt a swell of hope knot in my stomach. "Callista," he said, breathless as if he had just raced through the hospital halls. "I spoke with the medical team. They're working on genetic testing for you and Ethan, but we need consent. It's critical. Fear intertwined with realization. Is it necessary? My heart pounded. I mean, if my father's challenges are his alone, not necessarily. But it's possible he had a hereditary condition, and forewarned is forearmed. He hesitated, the weight of his words seeping through. We cannot risk burying our heads in the sand. This is family history, it is the core of what is happening. The anger surged once more. How could this man act as if he held the answers when I'd been left to piece together half-truths my whole life? But I felt Ethan's gaze, unwavering and steady. That innocence reminded me of all that was at stake. Fine, I uttered, my voice breathless while accepting the power stripped from me. Well, do it. Ethan and I will do the tests. Let's face this head on. Let's be smart about this. Daniel nodded, relief flooding his features. Then let's set it up, he replied, gentler now as he gestured to the doctors waiting beyond the door. My heart pounded as I watched him move with purpose, feeling the stirring of the air shift around us. Perhaps the moment of pain could lead to a semblance of resolution, and I clutched Ethan even tighter, feeling the warmth of his small frame against me. We're going to get through this, I whispered to him, more to assure myself than anything. In that moment of vulnerability, I caught my breath, unwilling to let the past shackle my wishes for the future. Whatever darkness lay ahead, I had loved fiercely enough through the years to start again, to build anew no matter what paths we chose. Just as they cleared the room and prepared my father for surgery, one thought flickered bright as a candle amid the shadows, illuminating my fragile state. Forgiveness, even amid turmoil, is a choice I could make. A release I could grant to myself. Suddenly, the tension lifted slightly, and I stepped back, feeling the warmth of family. As the doctors wheeled my father out of the room, I glanced down at Ethan, who seemed to shimmer with an innocence that made my heart swell. Mom, Ethan said, a glimmer of determination in his eyes, will Grandpa be okay? And in that moment, for the first time in years, I understood the depth of hope in his question, wrapping it delicately around my heart. Yes, I said confidently, wiping the remnants of tears. Grandpa will be okay. He's a fighter, just like you. Ethan beamed, and I couldn't help but feel a flicker of relief rush through me. It was time to embrace the beautiful mess of our lives and allow the echoes of our history to fade, making space for a new legacy. In that space filled with uncertainty, I felt the gravity of our shared journey, an emotional reconciliation in its own way, tightening like a soothing embrace around us. As I walked forward, hand in hand with my son, I knew this was not simply about epic battles in the past or future. It was about moments of clarity amid storms, seizing fleeting breaths of forgiveness, and embracing whatever came next. And as we moved toward the surgical ward, that truth settled deep within me, a lightness wafting above the clouds of doubt. I would learn to forgive. I would allow peace to nestle into my heart. Together we would emerge from the dark. Together we would carve a new path, bright with possibility. Finally, I whispered softly, no matter what comes, we will always choose love.